Home Depot breaking a 2-year streak of negative same-store sales, but they did issue some weaker than expected full-year guidance. Here with his take on the numbers, Morgan Stanley analyst Simeon Gutman has a 450 target and an overweight rating on the stock. Simeon, thanks for the time this morning. Good to see you.
Likewise. How you doing?
Good. Can you put these comps into some perspective, the guidance too, and then sort of related to the yield backdrop that we're looking at today?
Comps are normalizing. We're on a path that if you look over the last 2 years where we had negative comps, you're cycling those tough comparisons, and the industry naturally grows. We've given back the excess consumption that occurred during the COVID period, and we're normalizing some of the ticket, some deflationary pressure from the ticket. And so everything is starting to stabilize, to turn. You've got a little bit of a bump from hurricanes, from weather in the fourth quarter. But outside of that, it looks like we're on this curve of stabilization. We're on this glide path to actually get a little bit stronger in 2025.
I was going to say, seasonally, not a bad time to have all this happen. Am I right?
Nope. Yeah, seasonally right. I mean, weather is always a factor at this point of the year. Over the years, it's actually become a bigger and bigger factor at the end of the year. You want unfavorable weather because it's in the comparison base, and now we go into spring selling season. We'll see what happens. You mentioned the yield backdrop. That's not favorable. Home Depot even said that they're not building in much of any change in housing turnover into their outlook, which was interesting because, we're thinking it's going to be a little bit better. Existing home sales up mid-single digits in 25.
So if we are talking more and more about a cyclical trough, to what other names might your enthusiasm get spread?
Look, peak to trough, there's a bunch of names, cyclical. Besides Home Depot, the number one competitor, Lowe's, Floor and Decor would be in that group. And then think about home furnishings. We have a bunch of home furnishing names. Peak to trough, the idea is that demand is bottoming, earnings cycle runs. So Restoration Hardware, Wayfair's, Williams-Sonoma's of the world. That would be the group of stocks that would most check those boxes and most leverage to a housing recovery.
Are you seeing anything in other areas of macro employment or spending intentions that might collide with a better demand backdrop?
Maybe just recently, a little bit of wealth effect, sentiment. I think a little bit of uncertainty to start the beginning of the year. Even Home Depot said it themselves. There's some aversion to these higher rates. Consumers are not taking on or borrowing money to pursue discretionary projects. That's pretty much it. We're overall stable. One of the things we've been watching for 3 years, services spending, taking a lion's share of an overall consumer budget. Service inflation is still sticky. We haven't fixed that yet. And a consumer is still spending on services, prioritizing some services, elective services like travel, leisure, over non-elective ones like healthcare. So there's a lot of pressure on that wallet that's inhibiting how much the consumer can actually spend on goods. Until that inflation moderates, we're pretty much stuck in this range.
Right. Finally, this conference board number today, biggest drop since 2021, getting some attention. In general, when you think of home builders or home furnishing, anything housing related, does that lean toward the discretionary side, or is that something that if a consumer needs to do it, he's going to do it?
Unequivocally, it leans towards discretionary. But in any given year, 90 to 95% of home improvement demand comes from homes that are not turning over. And that's somewhere 60, 70% maintenance and repair. So the industry replenishes itself nicely year on, year out, and that's the nice thing about the home improvement industry. So 20, 30% of the spend is probably discretionary, and then an additional 5 to 10% needs to come from turnover every given year, and turnover is directly related to discretion.
Interesting. Well, we'll see what kind of ratification we get from Lowe's tomorrow, Simeon. Thanks very much, as always.
Thanks for having me. Yep.